But then as I got wanting to coach higher level, I was like, man, I really got to learn this passing stuff because I was not a passing guy. And then once I started learning the air raid and I learned from Hal Mummy, and then I started looking at your stuff, I was like, okay, like I could see how this is like really hard to stop if you could do it right. And a lot of people told me, hey man, you can't run that on a 12U team. That's not possible. And we come out and we're 2x2 and we're throwing stick. I think we threw 5 touchdowns on stick and 2 on shallow. It was a lot of fun, man. It's something you can run on any age group, you know, and be really successful if you keep it simple. You don't overcomplicate it.
Hey coaches, back with another episode of Let Them Throw. I just had a great conversation with Coach Cliff out of Tampa, Florida, where he is currently the head football coach of a 12U team for the Brandon Cowboys and also serves as the commissioner on their board. We go deep into everything from his experience going down that air raid rabbit hole like many of us have done, his experience from going to 8U all the way up to 14U, and all the adjustments he had to make in between. I think you'll get a lot out of that. Figuring out GT counter to make it work for their team, managing staff year to year as that changes so often, and his final goal of implementing air raid through the entire program. So sit back, hang out, because we're going to spend a little under an hour with Coach Cliff talking about those things and much more here on Let Them Throw. Yeah, man. No, I appreciate you joining me a little bit today and just talking through. I know we've talked on Facebook a little bit on the chat and some of the groups, but man, those videos you were showing me, so much fun. You guys have been crushing it with the air raid, and those are 12U teams that you're showing?
Yeah, the ones with the pink and the younger guys, those are all 12-year-olds. Actually, believe it or not, majority of that team was 11. My quarterback was 12. And one receiver was 12. So no one was. They're all 12. The other team was a 13U team.
The one that was in this. I'm assuming it's the Super Bowl if you guys are playing in Tampa Bay's freaking stadium.
Oh, that one. That one was 12-year-olds. Yeah, that was Battle of the Champions.
Man, no, I mean all the film was great, and yeah, it's actually pretty cool that I couldn't really tell the difference if they were 12 or 14 or 13.
Yep.
Hey, let me ask you, what is your background? Did you play ball? Obviously, at some point, do you play college? What did you do?
I played a lot of little league, and then I got into high school and didn't play. Decided not to play, and then I played semi-pro for a little bit. Played quarterback for a while, and then I just kind of fell in love with the game and really just studied for years and years and years. And because I didn't want to take a coaching job until I felt like I had enough experience. And I actually overdid it a little bit at first. Yeah, like overdid it. And I was doing too much my first year on 8U. And then second year, I had a really good 8U season. And then I ended up getting bumped to 14U in spring and then 12U. And we've had a lot of success running the air raid. So it's been a lot of fun. But that's all I do is study the football. I did Hal Mummy's course. I did Bobby Acosta's course, some West Coast stuff, Kenny Simpson shotgun, wing tee. Like I like that a lot. That was pretty cool. Even the Texas slot tee, did a lot of research on that. So
Nice.
that's kind of all I do is study football in my free time.
Love it, man. No, I mean, I think a lot of coaches that are on these forums like us are of that same mindset, right? And especially when it's at the youth level, there are probably fewer guys like us than there aren't. So if you to lead a team down there and actually lead the coaching staff, it's obviously a huge advantage to have someone at the top that's willing to and even has fun with it to learn new offenses and try to find new things and all that good stuff, man. You know, it's really cool that you're doing all that. And so, yeah, dude. And so when you talk about like the 8U, what were you guys running there? Did you do the gun spread like Kenny, or what were you guys running at that age?
So on 8U, my first year, I ran the first year I ended up running something I got from I think Youth Football Online. It was a like a pistol offense. It was great but I was also trying to run wishbone, so that's the part where I was doing too much. I didn't really commit to like one thing.
Oh yeah,
it was great, but the challenge was when you're on that 8U level, you could have a center that snaps perfect. You could have 3 centers that are great, and then you'll drive all the way down the field, and then boom, shotgun snap. The one bad snap is 20 yards over the head and can cost you the whole drive. So then I ended up watching a lot of Liberty Hill from Texas, and I got with Coach Brian Herman. He gave me a lot of resources that so he actually shared his whole huddle with me. He's a really cool guy. So I got to watch all of Liberty Hill's film, and I ended up doing his course. I think on what is that website? Championship Football Production.
Okay. Yeah.
So I saw the slot T, but my first year 8U, I had to piece it all together myself based off his course because I didn't have his contact info yet. And then I had to go watch all their film and try to figure out because he didn't put everything on that course. The slot T guys would have been really mad. So I had to go study their film for like a whole year and try to piece together and put my own slot T, stuff on it. So I ended up actually having to one word it, which I learned from Bixby. So Bixby High School, one word's everything. They've won like 7 state titles in a row. So I ended up copying Bixby's course, like what I learned from them and how to one word stuff. And then I did it for kids. So what we did was we took and my wife came up with the idea instead of doing it like the states, like Bixby does, because Bixby one words their stuff and calls it like they'll say Gator is a play, and then the chomp is the one word signal.
Hmm.
So she was like, hey, for 8U kids, maybe they don't know all the Florida teams, and the Texas teams. So what if we did habitats? And I was like, that's actually genius. So we would call forest the slot T formation, and we only carried one formation, but the animals in the forest would be, the play. So bear was always a dive with a fake reverse behind it. And then if we wanted a different kid to get the ball, we would just tag that kid's name. So if I said DeMarcus Bear, we still ran Bear, but we would hand it to DeMarcus. It was a fake dive now and then an end around. That play was probably our bread and butter. We only had 4 plays, and I learned that from them, like, hey, don't do too much this year. And because we ran that power and the counter so well, he would get 4 or 5 touches with 4 or 5 touchdowns. It was just like you could look at my page, and I have a 7-minute highlight video of this kid that joined mid-season. I got blessed on 8U, and he was averaging 4 to 5 touchdowns a game by himself. And in Pop Warner, you're not allowed to. If you start blowing teams out, you can't keep giving the kid the ball. So that was conservative. But that was the best offense that we ran in terms of production was a slot T, and it was a lot of fun. But then as I got wanting to coach higher level, I was like, man, I really got to learn this passing stuff because I was not a passing guy.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, let me grind it out, get 3 or 4 yards of carry, be physical. And then once I started learning the air raid and I learned from Hal Mummy, and then I started looking at ear stuff, I was like, okay, like I could see how this is like really hard to stop if you could do it right. And a lot of people told me, hey man, you can't run that on a 12U team. That's not possible. And at the beginning we struggled. We had a really good quarterback. He ended up bumping up to not high school, but middle school. He became a starter like right before the season started, the day before our game. So I lost my quarterback beginning of this season and ended up having my tackle having to go to quarterback, and it was a whole nightmare at the beginning. So the beginning of the season was stressful, and then I got lucky and I prayed, and this guy reached out to me. I was like, hey man, my son's on the bench at another team. He could throw, and he sent me some videos, and I was like, dude, it's mid-season, but I promise you I could teach him, and I could teach him really quick. I only need to teach him like 3 concepts. And he ended up joining, and he struggled his first 2 games because he's never actually had a rep at quarterback. But I want to say his 3rd game, he threw like 7 touchdowns. 4 got called back, but I think we threw 5 touchdowns on stick and 2 on shallow. It was so it was interesting watching the little league teams that would stay in like one coverage the whole game, or they're used to teams just grounding and pounding it, and we come out and we're 2-by-2 and we're throwing stick, and the kid he's staying on his on the slot on the Y, and we're throwing the stick, and we unscored 3 times. So now the coach is like, hey, you got to cover the back, and then we throw it right behind him. So it was a lot of fun, man. It's something you can run on any age group, and be really successful if you keep it simple. You don't overcomplicate it.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing, right? And what you're describing is like one thing that's kind of counterintuitive to a lot of coaches, like, okay, well, 12U, there's no way I can find the consistency to throw and pass.
Yep.
But the thing that we're not thinking of until we actually do it is like the defense, they're not ready at that level. It
No, they're
actually
not.
gets easier the lower you get. Now,
Yep.
you start getting below 12U, then, you start bumping into who can throw and catch. But at 12U, these kids have played flag their whole life. They play in the
Yep.
playground. They're throwing the ball. Like that's what they want to do anyway. So it's more about coaching. And that's the one thing about the film that you sent me was like, you can tell the difference between a well-coached team, and you see it out here too, and versus a team that, and there's nothing against the coaches. We're all volunteers and whatnot. But if you have a game plan for practice, and that's the biggest thing is when coaches talk to me about, hey, how do I get my team better? It's like, it's just practice. Like you just have to
Yep.
set up practice right and just be focused on it. And obviously, like you said, make it simple so the quarterback and the receivers can understand it. But dude, it's just you could really see in that film. And I don't know if you'd be open to sharing that with me so I can kind of share a couple clips out to the audience. But this 12U piece is really a hot topic right now, with people messaging me like, can I actually do it? And one of the main things I wanted to talk to you about was you guys run counter, and it's not only GT. You guys run GH. You're using using the H back,
Yep.
using fullbacks, using whoever you want to get there, and that's the main point. I love that because maybe you don't have a tackle that could always get there, but if you have a
Yep.
fullback type of body that can, like it's more about that. So talk to me a little bit about like how you guys got into running counter, and it just a little bit of like, did you run into issues? Did you have to like battle your coaches to run it, or?
Yeah, well, in spring, in spring, I had my org that I was with was the Cowboys. They didn't have I couldn't get to 14U with the previous athletic director because he said I didn't have experience. So I was like, okay, I did the best, in our league on 8U. So I reached out to another organization and they hadn't won a game in like I want to say 3 years on varsity. I think they had like maybe 3 touchdowns in 3 years. Like it was pretty bad. So I reached out to him and I was like, hey, like give me a shot. I went to church with the guy. He gave me a shot. He's like, you know what? I like you. You have a good family. He brought me over for spring for 14U. And we didn't have many kids at all. I mean, they had 3 kids, so I had to go recruit. And at the beginning, it was very tough. I didn't have a quarterback, but it was kind of like this season, like right at the third game, I was still recruiting, trying to get kids because I joined late and I found a quarterback from another team. They were running the same thing you see all little league teams run, where you catch the ball and you're running the single wing power, you're running, right and you're running left, and then you're handing the ball off. And then maybe they have a built-in corner route or they throw a go route here and there, but there wasn't a real scheme, you know what I mean? So we installed the base plays. We tried GT counter, and we tried inside zone. Uh, GT counter for me did not work in the beginning. It wasn't because it's not a good play on 14U. It was personnel. Like I said, I was struggling with linemen. I had bigger bodies. I didn't have like kids that could really move. So when we were pulling the right guard and tackle, they weren't moving quick enough. My guard would or the center would get blown up to the point where he would kind of hit the tackle or the guard when he was pulling, so it would kill the whole play.
Right.
Um, Part of it was coaching. I think had instead of me having those kids play both ways, but we were short on linemen. I think we had 7 linemen, so it was like the best kids were playing both sides, and then the other kids were so severely undersized that pulling at the time wasn't a good idea. So we ended up sticking to zone for the rest of the season, and we actually did pretty good on zone. We didn't have the best downhill run game, so that's when I got back to the Cowboys in fall, and I looked at it and I go, okay, maybe not pull both. Let me try G counter with the H back, and that worked out so good, like really good. I mean, we were averaging. I want to say when I went back to the film, I think it was about 12 to 15 yards a carry. And that's being gracious. That's not counting like 70-yard runs because my running back would break like 7 tackles. I ended up getting a stud like midseason. I don't know. I got really lucky midseason where I picked up a running back and a quarterback, and we would pull that play. Now, what would kill it would be if someone lined up in the A gap, the linebacker, that one linebacker comes through that A gap and he flies through. So when it comes to being able to run this kind of stuff, it's more about education as a coach.
Mhm.
because I've seen a lot of little league coaches that I've talked to that have asked me about my success and my offense, and they're like, "Hey, how do you run this?" And I'm like, "Well, you can't run it if you don't have an if-then scenario. It's just like a wing T, you know what I mean? Like a lot of coaches, somebody puts 8 kids in the box, and they're still trying to run up the middle with 5, and they're 2 by 2, and I'm like, well, coach, maybe the kids, maybe it's not the kids, maybe we're running at a disadvantage, and so being able to run the shallow or the buzz, and it was really the same play, man. Like if that kid started blitzing, I was like, you know what, this team was way bigger than us if you look at the photos. So I was like, you know what, if they're gonna evade the middle of the field, I'm just gonna throw something quick like a shallow route or a slant. And then when they started putting 2 kids on my son to guard him, I just switched. I took him from the Y and bumped him out. I kept him as a Y, but I put him on the outside, and I would just motion him into the play so they couldn't double team him, or they weren't
Nice.
fast enough. So then I would call like buzz shallow. You know what I mean? I would just tell the quarterback, "Hey, forget the progression. There's nobody middle of the field. Just catch the ball and just rip it to him." And he was creasing him. I mean, he had 340 yards in the first 3 quarters of that game through the air, just on shallow screens, and we ran Y cross and that stick route.
Dude, and let's pause on that for a second because that is absolutely what all these coaches are going to see. You get into spread and you come out, or they just know you're a spread team by the time you play them.
Yep.
They're going to test you, they're going to blitz, and old school mentality. And I talked about this a lot when I first started this channel 5 years ago. I was dealing with De La Salle mindset out here where it was just
Yeah.
pound the ball. And when they
Like
would say, yeah, exactly. And like that was great in the 90s. I loved running it. That was great, but it's not the 90s anymore. And so
right.
when they would bring more people, their response to me was, well, we need to add a tight end or we need to add a line. I'm like, bro, like you not see the space behind, like that's a home run waiting to happen.
Yeah.
So the
It's a
coaches
5 yard pass. It's not that hard. I mean, my 8-year-old son does it.
exactly. So I love that, and I just want to reinforce it with coaches. That yes, they're going to send the house. That's what their everyone's first response is. But that shouldn't be a fear thing. That's a okay. You're giving us an opportunity, and like
Yep.
you said, if you can just run a shallow or somehow just get into that space and run our plays, fine, run our plays. Um, but just run that play that's going to fill that space that they're leaving. It doesn't have to be chaos. It actually can be a huge advantage. Now, talk to me about did you call the play from the line of scrimmage? Are you going no huddle and then like they're looking over to you?
We're gonna do that this year. We're gonna go no huddle this year. I didn't I didn't last year. We had that storm, and I told you. Remember, the quarterback signed up. He had, I kid you not, he had, I want to say one practice, 2 practices. He didn't get a full install, so I couldn't no huddle it. He didn't. He never had an actual quarterback rep before. He went to quarterback training, but he had never actually been a
Right.
quarterback. He was a playing defensive end, and so it wasn't something that I could do because we were having that storm come, and it was like every practice was getting canceled, and then certain kids wouldn't show up to practice. So it was, for me, it was very challenging getting the numbers out there. If I had the quarterback, I would have like one receiver. And then it was
Right.
always my son. That's the one that had like 300, 400 yards in the first 3 quarters. So it was kind of like, hey, some of these kids aren't going to know the progression, so we're going to have to tell them in the huddle.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't complicated. I made them, work the play before the play start, like before the game started. So let's say if I went on huddle, what I would do is I would look at quick cuts, and if I'd take their base defense, and I would just take the little yellow line and draw our play up on it. And I say, look, this kid's he's gonna move right here. And I'd send the pictures to they're 12 years old. They got cell phones. All right. I
Yeah.
don't,
Exactly.
so I'd send him a little screenshot like, hey, this kid's gonna do X, Y, and Z. I just want you to catch, rip, and throw it. Like it's a 5 yard pass.
Yep.
Anybody can do this. It's really not hard. And because I had the linemen, their splits were a little bit far off the ball, and they actually made us move like middle of the game. They were like, "Hey, your splits are too far back," and they penalized us for it. Because I was cheap. I mean, those kids were
Yeah.
they were Florida. I think they're Tri County. It's a different Oregon Pop Warner, so the kids were a little bit bigger than what we had. So I had to be a little smarter than them. So I was like, "Hey, just until they call a penalty on us, we're gonna get really deep in our splits." And they eventually called it, and then we moved them up. But I would tell the quarterback, "All right, just back up 6 yards." and we're just going to catch and rip, and it was more about like not beating my head into a wall and saying, you know what, I have to have a run game when I knew I wouldn't be able to have a run game against that team just due to physicality. So,
Exactly.
it was just being smart, having the kids know what they were going to do before the game. Like we played the game before the game was played. It could be done on any level. You know what I mean? Like it's just really the coaches that restrict themselves. It's not the kids.
Right. And to some degree, they probably they never experienced a coach that did that for them. So maybe they don't know that's what they're supposed to do even. But
Yep.
so when you're calling those plays and you're kind of guessing to some degree, educated guess when they might send those blitzes. So yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is like,
No,
how
they
do
had
you,
he would kind of walk right up. Sometimes it took me
and
a
then,
minute because he was very, very random, but I noticed it was more of like on like third and long,
yeah,
fourth down, he would come right through that A gap. But a lot of it, I mean, they do it on film. You could kind of it's a lot of work, but I would, if they have 5 down linemen, they only got 6 left. They got 1 linebacker, that puts them at a disadvantage in the numbers game, to the strength side. So I would just call why stick. And if he
nice.
widened out, sometimes what some teams would do they would take the D in for some reason. And, in spring, I noticed that the better coach teams, sometimes these guys coach high school. So they would take their D in and he would kind of like, act like he's going to contain and then carry that swing,
Hmm.
and then the outside linebacker would, take the stick. So we would just do the same progression how Mummy said, and we just go to the slant. But we would have the kids just, crease their slant more up the middle of the field instead of carrying it across and getting intercepted. So when it comes to calling the play, it wasn't really random. I would just tell the kids like, hey, if he's gonna sit down underneath, just carry it behind him. So it was like little small things that I told the kids like, hey, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z if this kid does that. But it was because I had 6 plays and I kept it so simple. It really wasn't like me being able to tell them, hey, if he does this, do that. It's not too much. But had I had like 12 or 13, 14 plays, and then I'm giving them different rules for different,
Yeah.
things that the safety does, I don't think I would have been able to have success.
No, that makes sense. No, that's the whole point why we tried to structure it that way. So that's perfect. So yeah, I mean, the one thing I would get at is for these coaches is no huddle doesn't mean you have to go fast, right?
Right.
It just means you're giving me as a coach, I
Yep.
get to see what the defense is, right? So like,
Yeah.
yes, I can probably have an educated guess on third and long what defense they're gonna be on. But if you can get on the line of scrimmage and see the defense and then call the play, gosh, that's such an advantage. And with
Correct.
the playbook, right, you can hand signal most of it,
Yep.
or one word it if you have motions, right? That's the only part where it gets a little sticky. We have wristbands
Yeah.
for longer, you know, open X move, return,
Yep.
whatever you're tagging. So maybe the wristband's good for that, and you can just yell out whatever the number is.
Correct.
But for the most part, man, if you're just running our core 6 plays like we always do, um, it's a nice advantage for a play caller, and it kind of takes the guesswork out of it a little bit. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you've educated yourself where you can kind of see it. If coaches don't do that, I think
Yeah.
that's another way to just go no huddle.
Yep.
Don't be in a hurry. You have the whole time. Like you don't have to go fast. Uh,
Correct.
but
The other
like,
thing the other thing was limiting my formations.
yes,
You know, formations can cause you some problems. Some people are like, "Hey, I want to go 2 by 2, but then I want to be able to go double tight end and, 2, 3 running backs." And it's like, that's great, but little league coaches are very confusing. I don't know what like, they're not it's not high school. You're gonna run into a couple teams where they're gonna run a true scheme, but you'll run into some teams that you line up and you go, 20 personnel or 30, 21, and then the defense isn't a defense you've never seen in your life. You're like, this isn't cover 3, it's not cover 1. It's like, yeah. So it's like when I noticed when I was doing that, it hurt me more because then the quarterback was like, man, these kids, he's never seen it before. He doesn't know, and I don't even know what the kids are gonna do. So I stayed in 2 by 2 almost the whole time, and I would just, maybe motion or do an orbit or jet, just make the plays look the same. You know what I mean? Like I threw probably 7 to 8 touchdowns in like 2-3 games on wide corner alone just by adding an orbit motion. But throwing the screen early in the game. So just being smart. Like the kids are 13 years old. They try to get too smart. The coaches try to get too smart, and you keep hitting them with screens, and they're like, "Hey, go to the screen, go to the screen." And there's a couple of videos on my page where if you look at it, you'll hear the coach saying like screen, 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 and we throw a corner right behind him, and he just got his kid. He made his kid wrong on his own. So.
Totally. No, I saw those Rita-Litas you were running. Those are clean, dude. I mean, you guys got it down. And again,
Yeah.
just like you could tell they're well coached. That's why I was asking you about your history, because it honestly, man, you look like you've been coaching for a lot longer than you're describing. So good on
Yeah,
you.
spring we didn't do Rita really good, and it was still a crazy play. Like my running back would kind of just like kick right away. But this year I was like, you know what? I want you to like just hide behind the lineman, and because we've been running the stick route so much, or we've been running, deep game so much, they all kind of backed up, and the lineman would release, and my running back would just sneak right behind him. And this year that play was about 22 yards a play.
I bet it looked
And
like.
so it'd be 4th and 15, and I knew that I was scoring on it. It was like that game against Raymond James was like 4th and 15 because they called the penalties on us for being too deep in our splits. And, they called a couple plays back because of that. So we got into a really bad situation. And I told my kids, I was like, look, I promise you this is a touchdown. You just got to sell it originally. And I had a fast running back. And 4th and 15, we take it for a touchdown. So
cool, man. So, and dude, those videos, you could just hear how much fun those parents are having, and everyone's eating, right? It's not just one kid dominating the ball because he happens to be the biggest and fastest. Like it's the whole team's eating. All the parents are excited. The whole staff, having a good time. Hey, I wanted to ask you about your staff. Do you keep staff members and bring them with you, or do you get new coaches every year? Like, how's that been working?
So my first year, I had all the same coaches for 2 years in a row on
Nice.
AU, and that ended up being really good because we're all bought in. That's another thing is who you have on your staff. It can really make or break you because some people won't be bought in, and you don't know what they're telling the parents of the kids. Sometimes that you have that kind of situation. So when I got to the other team in spring, I had a coach or two that I didn't that organization doesn't let you necessarily pick all your staff. They had some kids that were on a 10U team that were like their parents, the kids' parents they had really good 10U kids, but the 14U kids may not have been that good. But in order for them to keep those kids, I had to have them on my staff on 14U. So they're more old school, like, hey, I just want to run the ball up the middle every play. And I'm showing them a breakdown like, look, man, we don't got that kind of size to
Right.
do that. And I don't know what you're looking at, but we have 5 linemen. And if I try to put 7 down and the other 2 kids are 110 pounds and this kid's 250, 6'2", like this might not be the best the best matchup. Like, we have some shifty receivers, some good kids, but yeah, I try to keep the same staff. I lost a lot of my staff when I went to that other team in spring. So I had to rebuild, and this year I ended up getting 8 coaches. They were all bought in. It was a lot of fun, man, when you get the right staff and you find the right people. And I think setting expectations before the season and kind of saying, hey, look, here's our scheme, here's what we run. You'll really get, people who say, hey, I don't like it or I do like it. And then you can kind of like make your decision from there. And due to me having so much film, I actually had so many kids and parents reach out that were like, man, you're running some really cool stuff, like
Right.
you're running some cool plays and my kid's excited, so that was different. Like I ended up getting a quarterback who's like Lamar Jackson this year, and it's really going to help me open up the playbook because even though like if you look at my spring for my 14U, that was something I did a lot. I had a slow quarterback, but because we passed so much, I would just run draw. Like I would just tell him, hey, like run open H orbit wide corner, but I just want you to just peek it and then just rip it right up the middle. And because all their kids were trying to cover the flats and get out there, we would get like 7 yards of carry on a quarterback draw. So just out coaching people, man. But the kids they start seeing all these videos on TikTok, and for me as a recruiter, I was taking people's like taking kids from other like not Pop Warner because you can't recruit, but like other organizations. I say, hey, look, I know you guys are just running right and left.
Yep.
Yeah, your kid plays receiver. How many times has he caught a ball?
Yep.
And I send them, one video, and they'd be like, man, you guys throw a lot. Like, how do you guys do that? And I'm like, just repetition. And I ended up picking up so many receivers and kids and I got parents reaching out to me now, like, hey, like, can you teach me how you did X, Y, and Z? Coaches are reaching out to me. So, it's a lot of fun, man. The kids can have fun, the parents have fun, and you don't have those kids that come and they try 1 year and then you're just running left and right, and then the kids don't enjoy it at all. You ruin football for them. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, and so let's just take, for instance, your O-line
Yep.
coach, because I do think when coaches get into this situation, and they have to, not have to, but they get given most of their staff, right? And
Yep.
that's the first dude I'm trying to figure out who that's going to be, right? Um, how do you coach? Because I'm assuming you're probably more with the receivers and quarterbacks through practice more, or
Um,
how does
that
that
was
work?
yeah, I made that mistake. I had a really good offensive line coach on 8U. He played college, and then his son wanted to try hockey, so he took a break from football,
Mhm.
and I ended up losing him. And I found another O line coach, but the coach that I had, he wasn't someone that wanted to like really study and learn. He was
Right.
not that he's a bad guy. He just he has
Oh,
work and he has things going on. So I ended up having that. The reason why our line struggled a lot and we had to rely so much on the pass is because I didn't have a great O line coach,
yeah.
but then I didn't have a good staff to coach all the other groups too. So in my head, it was like offensive line is great. So I kept it simple. I would have them work together. In spring and fall of this year, I had to have them all work together. So when we did Rita, we'd have the running backs do Rita with them. But we still did everything real simple, but we had to work them all together. And the only thing I'd have my line coach do is work our G counter. So say, hey, it's just Larry Roger. And then I would just have the left tackle block down and grab the middle backer. And I'd leave the other backer outside. And if he started trying to make tackles on the Larry, then we would just throw a screen behind him or a slant or a cross. So, it got him in trouble when they try to help out. But yeah, I mean, this year I have about 8 coaches already. Um,
Nice.
everyone's bought in from the whole organization. I took over as athletic director, so they're actually having me build the whole offense from 6U to 14U. And I went out and hired a whole group of coaches that know me well enough, and they're like, "Hey, man, like, they invited me to their teams to come help them with like all-star games." So now I got them all on my staff, and we're gonna run one system from front to bottom, even if it's not shotgun GH counter on 8U, we're still going to run a version of Larry, but, we'll still run the same formations, but maybe use belly or, buck or something like that for the younger kids. But we still have air raid concepts. We're still going to run Y corner. We're still going to run stick, and we'll still run go or slants. You know what I mean? Like 4 verts was one of my best plays, the whole season.
No, I
So,
love that, bro. And yeah, I mean, one of the proudest moments I had was having my last year at that organization was having all 4 levels running air raid. Like you said, the 8U, 9U team they weren't running the full offense, but they
yep.
were running a whole lot of like our screens, Larry Roger all day, right?
Yep.
They can still run stick fade out. You just bring the outside receivers in a little bit
Yeah,
and
you kind of compress them,
yeah. And then Verts, yeah, they were crushing it with Verts, dude. So
Yeah,
I
a lot
love
of kids, they'll just stay still in that group. They won't even move. And so that's why sometimes it's unpredictable. So like I was like on 8U, we would try to run like a little pop pass, but some kids on certain teams, like they'd be so maybe they weren't coached well and they would just stay still the whole game.
right.
It would get in the way on accident. So, we had to adjust based off, what we saw coaching wise. When you get to the 12 and 14 levels, they usually take it a little bit more serious and the kids are in the right spot. So a lot more fun.
For sure, man. And yeah, to your point, dude, we had the same thing. My last year, we had kids driving from San Francisco, and we lived about 50 miles east, a little warmer.
Yeah.
And they were driving out because no one in youth would throw the ball in. And my quarterback from that year actually just committed to Vandy. He's
Yep.
now a junior in high school, and he was coming from the city to play this style of football because he wanted to be a quarterback at the next level, and why not start early, learning how to read things. And
Yep.
it's really cool, and that's another message for these coaches. Like if everyone's eating and everyone's having fun, and yeah, it might take a while to get going. Obviously, you're teaching something new, but if you can
Yeah.
stick with it, it's going to not only make everyone happy, but it'll bring people to you
Yeah,
without
it
you.
will. I mean, it doesn't have to be like you don't have to say, "Hey, I know this kid can't catch, but I'm going to throw him the ball." I mean, you could just run a jet sweep with him and
Yeah,
then just use him. Like I had a kid on 14U that he truthfully couldn't catch. And my left side was like I really couldn't throw to my left side, but I would use them with motion. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to use them with motion or jet. Even if they only get 3 yards in the jet sweep, it would set up things later on. So, you run your jet and then you run right corner and then you're just reading, corner, snag to the jet. So using those kids in other ways, you don't have to necessarily feed them the ball, but, you give them a couple touches a game, throw a couple now screens, and then you use them in motion and they feel like they're part of the play. They're running around, they're having fun, and when they watch film and they see that they're covered, they're not like upset. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I didn't get the ball thrown in this play. You got to set that culture to where it's like, hey, it's not like a one-person game. We're doing what's best for the team, and at the end of the day, individual stats don't matter. We want to win. So if we throw this wide corner 10 times and we score 9, we're gonna run wide corner. Like the whole game. If first, we play that one team, I don't know why, but we threw 7 touchdowns on stick. It was to one kid.
Yeah,
so
and at some point, fade on your side is going to be the one we're eating on. So like, just it's all based on the defense, and that's another thing with the parents. Like, we don't call plays for kids. We just the quarterback throws the open guy. So you don't there's no I'm not choosing who gets the ball every time. It's the defense that's telling us who to throw to. So
correct.
You know what I mean? So talk to me about quarterbacks, man. It sounds like you are pretty tied in with them, obviously, as the OC and head coach of most of these teams. How are you kind of teaching them? It sounds like you guys watch a lot of film together, maybe do some whiteboard stuff. Like, how do you teach?
So a lot of film. My kids were going to a quarterback academy at the time, so that's how I found 1 or 2 of them.
Nice.
And then I started getting on the forums and posting, and then I would post the film. People would reach out to me and say, hey, and it wasn't a hard. I'm not even. It wasn't hard to get the kids. They're on teams where they're running the wing T still.
Yep.
And they're successful at the wing T. The wing T is not a bad offense. It's just when you're looking at the whole reason why I'm running what I'm running is when I look at the high schools in my area, I think it would be selfish for me to run something that like a wing T, knowing that when these kids get out of 12 and 14U, that they're not going to run a wing T. They're running almost everyone's running air raid. I mean, I've taken so many courses from all the schools around here, IMG. They're all running a variation of air raid. They just changed the name of the play to make it look like they made the play, right? Some people call chevron, fade out, wide corner is one thing, they label it after gas stations, but at the end of the day, it's all of what the air raid is. Yeah. So I told myself, if I was going to get these kids ready, it would be a system that they could truly say, if they went to a high school, man, these kids played with Coach Cliff or the Cowboys. That's why they're so well coached. They already know how to do footwork and stuff. So when it comes to the quarterbacks, it's a lot of repetition of practice. I run a couple of your drills that you ran, like the stick drill, where it's hey, if this guy expands, we do this. If he does this, we do that. And the rest of it is film. So now that I had the film from my 14U, I would show my 12-year-olds hey, look, they can only, if we're in 2x2, they can only give us certain looks. And that was, when I read that book I'll have to send it to you, but there was a book on, what happens when you do too much with formations. And you start getting kids, you start lining up in formations and the defense does things. And now your quarterback has never seen that look before. So now wide corner isn't the same. So really, we really kept it 2x2 and 3x1. We didn't, and we actually ran 2x2 the whole season, and we were still scoring, 3, 4, 5 touchdowns a game towards the end of the season, and we only ran 2x2, and it was because the defense could only do, there would be a 4-3, or they'd be a 5-3, or some teams would be a 6-1, and then we'd just kill them. I was I'm not going to run the ball. It doesn't make any sense. So we just throw stick the whole game. So, it was kind of funny, I'm just man, this guy's not changing up, and this might be a 70-point game, and then you start feeling bad, so you start running other plays.
No, but dude, that is such a big point. And every time I tell a coach this, what I'm about to say, they look at me kind of crazy at first, and then a week or two later, they'll come back and be oh, okay. So huge coaching point. It is not bad. You are not a bad coach if you call the same play over and over in the game. That actually makes you a good coach. Make them stop that play. If you have success, make them stop it before you stop running the shit.
I stopped, dude. I struggled my first year running air raid. Not really. I still had a lot of success because the plays were just so wide open. But for some reason, I would run stick, and then I'd be well, it was good, but now I'm going to run a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, you want to get in the bag a little bit, right?
Yeah, so I'm trying to get in my bag, and I'm I'm thinking about man, how did I have such a successful season the year before? And then I was like, man, I'd run that dive play like fucking 20 times in a row, like, I had coaches on my team that were like, coach, just run it. I'm like, no, I'm getting 7 yards a carry. There's no reason to stop it. So then that game, when I was watching it, I had to put a note on my paper. I was like, don't, just keep it simple, like, don't do too much. And I'm about to call a crazy play. And then I'll think about it. And I'm like, they haven't changed their formation on defense to stop stick. So if this kid he goes down, we'll just throw the stick behind him. So I
Right.
told my quarterback, I was like, look, just keep running it. You just line up and run it again. And until they put a third or fourth person out there, we're going to keep running it. And eventually that's what they did. They
Right.
had
But
to, but we ran the cross route and the read, and then we'd send all the receivers up the field or across the field, and they would chase them, and then we just run a screen. So it was really funny to watch, like, coaches have no idea how to stop it. They weren't trained for it, never seen it before. Our 13U played a team that was a championship team from a spring league that had kids with way more talent than us. They came for a scrimmage, and at this team, my air raid team for 14U was very fundamental. So when they came out, they thought they were going to run a version of the wing T and kill us, but we stopped that. And then when we were on offense, it was like we would line up 5 wide, and they wouldn't even put a person out there. So, like, if you look at my spring film for 14U, you could tell in their league, or what they're used to, they've never seen a team line up and go, man, they don't even have a running back. Like, what is going on? The kids are all looking at their coach, like, and they're going like this, who, and then they're pointing at each other. They have no, and by the time they can even do that, I'm throwing, and the plays are the same. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm, early Y stick, if I say empty left or I say laser, I'm still going Y stick to the same side. It's just to see what the defense does. You know what I mean? And I didn't go with like 20 plays at at an empty. I would just call stick and fade out, and it was the same read for the quarterback. It would just confuse the defense, and then we just QB draw when they changed it. But we had 35 points the first quarter, and they packed their stuff up and left. And that was a team that went undefeated and won their championship. So they ended up leaving. Yeah, that was the only game I ever ran mesh, and you could just tell the kids they didn't have any clue like what was going on at all.
Yeah, that's beautiful. No, and that's man, that's so much fun for the kids to be able to do that, dude. Especially when they, there's always, you're confident in yourself, but you play a good team like that, or scrimmage a team, or a team comes out of the gate or the tunnel looking huge, and they get nervous. But then when you can actually just put it on them based on scheme and them like buying into the system, man, that is so rewarding for the kids to go through that and come out the other side like, oh yeah, maybe size isn't everything. Maybe my mind and our execution and sometimes getting boring in practice actually, like, it shows them the proof, right? And God,
yeah, I mean, we tried it, man. We tried. I tried to run the slot T on 14U, but like I said, we just didn't have. If you can't cut block and do certain things, and rep that, it's very hard. We tried that. I could actually show you. I'll have to share it with you. But I had a game where we played a team that won the championship the previous year on 12U, and they bumped to 13U. And for the first 2 drives, we tried it, man. And they were so big. I actually felt bad because my running backs were a little smaller, and they were getting clobbered. And the next drive, I look at my coaches and I go, man, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to try the 4 or 5 air raid plays that we have, and we tried it. And next thing you know, we're moving the ball down the field. Like, we're just marching down the field. But what it did for us was, one, it shut all the parents up that were like, or because you got the dads who are like, man, just line up in pro formation and run the ball, coach, and you try that and their kid's getting killed. He's getting absolutely murdered. And, then I line them up out and I split them out wide and I run a read a screen and we get 15, 20 yards and they're like, oh, okay. And then, then everyone's quiet. And then, you just I got a big buy-in from that. Cause I tried the way that everyone wanted to see. And just to prove a point, it didn't work. And then, I'm like, look, I know it's old school. It would theoretically work back in your day, but it's not working right now. Not for the group that I have. Maybe if I had 300-pound linemen, this would be great. But
yeah, maybe if you parents had bigger DNA and brought that here, but you can't say that. They don't want to hear that shit. They think their DNA is undefeated. Hey, so before I know we're running out of time here. Quantifying if your quarterbacks are understanding, like how do you know when your quarterbacks are understanding what you're trying to teach? Is it like game film again, or are you having them kind of whiteboarded back to you, or like what kind of things are you doing to understand if they get it?
It's really I mean, you could kinda see in practice, I think the best thing you could do as a coach is take that bandit drill very serious.
Love
Very,
it.
very serious. Take and then the small drills, right? Line up half it. You don't have like people are like, oh, I don't have numbers. Well, you don't have to. No one said line up 11 players. If you're in 2 by 2, just work your right side, work your stick. Have your running back flare out. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to. So I mean, and then it also helps you. Like no one's saying, hey, run wide corner and your quarterback can't throw a corner out. You know what I mean? Like you can't make it get but you can run bootleg. You can run fade out of your ace set. You could run you could run smash and have them bootleg to it. So it's finding your. I mean, once you have like those small drills that you do like every day, like you could kind of tell like, okay, this kid's not a pocket passer. He needs to be on the move or get out, or this kid needs to do X, Y, and Z. But to answer your question, it's really, that person that runs that shell defense for you in that bandit drill. That's the most important person that you're going to have, because if they don't give you a true look, you don't really get the reps that you're going to see. Like I said, formations tell you everything. So because I only ran 2 by 2 for most of the time, I knew that they could be in a 4-3, a 5-3, or some teams would be in a 6-1. And because I ran such a simple offense, I would just look at the film of how the team lined up against someone else. And then I would take those base plays that we have, like Rita, shallow, and I actually would screenshot the pictures from the other team's defense and say, hey, this is how we're going to run it against their defense. And they would be like, oh, okay. And then we would just practice against that. Like, I don't care what our defense runs. We're not playing our defense. So I would make my coach line up in the defense that we're playing, and we would just run those, 5 or 6 plays, and I would be able to tell if the quarterback can handle it right then and there, and then I can adjust really quickly. You know what I mean? Like, but if you just keep your formation simple, I didn't have to do a whole bunch of scouting. I just kind of knew like, okay, I'm 2 by 2 I'm going to go 2 by 2 this whole game and maybe do a couple motions. And I knew how the defense, there's only 3 ways the defense can line up. And I put on my notes, like if they line up 4-3, we're going to run this. If they're running cover 3, cover 1, we're going to run this. So it didn't have to be, I didn't complicate it. I kept it real simple. There's only one team that they win nationals almost every year. They go to Pop Warner Nationals and all their coaches are at Jesuit. So that was the only team that it really felt like an actual a war. The other teams, it felt like these guys had no idea what they're doing, and I was going to throw, for 1,000 in a game, But
Right.
There's only one team, but it's those everyday drills like you have running your stick, putting the kids out there, making the kids do different things every play. I didn't really touch too much RPOs because the kids would automatically they would like, oh, I'm throwing this no matter what because they wanted to throw it.
Yeah,
But
it's unnecessary, dude. It's just
yeah, doing what you did, just if you're 2 by 2, put 2 receivers out there and then put 3 or 3 defenders out there. You know what I mean? And just have them run a cover 3, a cover 1, or a cover 2. You're not going to see a crazy amount of coverages in Little League football. You're going to see a coach go cover 3, maybe cover 4 here and there, but most of the time it's 2 high or 1 high. So we just repped it. Same stuff.
Yeah, man, those half field drills, that's how we'll end this, man. Those half field drills are so gold. And you could do that year round at 7-on-7. You can do it during this camp. You could do it all season and just literally have 3-by-1, the 3 receivers on one side, and you're working against whatever that side of the defense is, man. That is
Yep.
gold. And you can get so many great reps out of that if you're just going, maybe the first quarterback, both quarterbacks, but they're rotating, like going to the right
Yep.
concept, and then the next guys do it to that side, and the next guys do it to that side. And you're coaching each. We had a quarterback or a coach behind each, the defense and the offense, kind of signaling what defense. So the
Yep.
quarterback didn't know what defense it was going to be. They'd have to do it visually, like they would figure it out. But that's the whole point. And then
Correct.
have a coach behind the defense signaling the play, hand signaling our plays to the quarterback. So
Yep.
it was practicing so many things, not the hand signaling, but the quarterback's having to process it, but really reading the corner and then down to through our progressions that we do, man, that half field drill is like so much gold. So that's, yeah, I don't know if I've ever done I gotta do that. Did I do a video on that? I can't remember if I actually did a
No, I
real quick.
didn't. I don't think we did any full field. I mean, we just couldn't. We didn't have the numbers to do it, so we just kept it same side. One right side on the left side, and then coaches they'll man you up, and then I would just be like, okay. So then I would just go late and then put my right side receiver on a post and just throw a shot, and we'd score. So it was funny. Or we'd move kids around, because they all knew the same plays and we rotated them through those plays. I could kind of move them in any position, and it's really just trying to get that one kid in little league a one-on-one and get the safety to do something he's not supposed to do, and just throw a shot, or throw the screens.
No, and on your film, dude, I love all your film, but the one that I love and that would probably be the best for these coaches to understand is you guys are in Tampa Stadium, and there
Yep.
was a gap blitz coming, and it was obvious that the a gap blitz was coming, and your quarterback, oh my gosh, it was so nice because this is something I yell about every day at practice, like
Yep.
one step and get the ball up and out. Most quarterbacks want to take a 3-step drop and
Correct.
hitch, look and look. And by the way, that receiver is outrunning your arm, you little 12-year-old, right? Like,
Yeah.
or you do all that, the less chance that you're going to be able to throw it to this kid. So your guy with the blitz, literally the linebackers on the quarterback's toes when he throws it,
Yeah.
because there's going to be pressure. That's everyone's first response. But your quarterback, because I'm assuming you guys do pat and go at practice,
Every practice.
one step, gets it up, and it was a thing of beauty, dude. Like,
That's actually one of the only. I mean, I'm doing that in winter conditioning right now, pat and go. And I tell my quarterbacks, it's one step and let it rip. We're gonna trust it. You're gonna throw it, back shoulder, throw it 5 yards in front of him with air on it. A lot of people tell him to throw it more on a line, but I had him trying to do the hitch at first, but the kids would just, I could never get, like, because I couldn't rep it. Some kids would be just greedy and they would run a go route no matter what, and the quarterback wouldn't read it. So I just made 4 verts, a legit 4 verts, and I would kind of tell the quarterback, hey, based off what I've seen, this kid's gonna do this. So, and on that film, I actually told my running back, I was like, that kid's gonna come, just cut block him, and he actually got 2 kids in one.
Nice.
And it gave the quarterback time to just take his one step and put air on it, and he trusted his guy to go get the ball. So it's just trust, man. You gotta have some fun with it. Don't be scared. There was a guy that I listened to. He goes, look, if they're going to play us man, I may throw verts, 4 verts 20 times. If I complete 6 of them, I'm having a big game, so I threw the same 4 passing concepts the whole game, and people look and they go, man, you didn't, run the ball. I mean, yeah, but we get 40, 50 points. Like, who cares?
Exactly. And by the way, if counters working that day, I'm going to run that 50 times. Like it,
Right.
you don't have to be a rocket scientist, dude. Just keep it simple. And that's what you've been saying this whole call. And I love that, man. It just keep it simple, make it real easy for formations, plays, coaching, practice. Just make it easy on the kids, and you can rep the heck of it, and you're going to find success. So right on, man. I appreciate you joining me for a little bit, dude. It's been great to catch up live for once, and to hear more about how you've been doing it, because I think a lot of coaches can take a lot from this. Do you mind if I post this? I wasn't like planning on posting this whole thing, but I think we had a really great conversation, dude, that people would get.
Yeah, that'd be cool. If you ever want, I mean, I could get a little bit more prepared, set up my webcam on the actual one, and pull up some film and kind of show you, because there are some games, like you said, where the quarterback was able to take one. He'd take a hit sometimes, but for the most part, if he listened and did his one step, he never got hit. So I have a lot of different film that we could show and like share, and I can go over like the thought process behind, like, I can even show you like some of my pregame scripts that I had, that I already had the game mapped out before we played it.
Coach, we're going to start those monthly networking events. Maybe we can feature you on that, and like let coaches come in and ask questions while we're doing it, and kind of the same format we're doing now. And then people can ask questions if they want. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's fine.
That would be amazing. Oh yeah, great idea, man. Okay, cool. So yeah, thanks for joining me. I'm sure I'll see you around Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
But yeah, let's set up a time to get you on that networking call so coaches can pick your brain a little bit, because I think they're going to have some questions after today, man.
Yeah, sure, man. Appreciate it.
All right, Coach. Appreciate you, man.
Yep.